The first thing people noticed wasn't the dancing, it was the silence. On an ordinary summer morning in 1518, the streets of Strasbourg stirred to life as they always had. Merchants lifted the shutters of their wooden shops. Horses pulled carts over uneven cobblestones. Church bells echoed across the rooftops, calling the faithful to prayer. It was a morning like countless others, until one woman stepped into the street and began to dance. There was no music, no celebration, no festival. She simply danced. At first, people barely noticed. A few curious glances, a few puzzled whispers. Some assumed she was entertaining children. Others believed she had simply lost her senses. But the hours passed, and she never stopped. By the end of the day, exhaustion should have forced her to collapse. Instead, she kept moving. Historians remember her as Frau Trophäa. Whether she realized it or not, her strange dance marked the beginning of one of history's most baffling mysteries. In the days that followed, something even more disturbing happened. Another person began to dance, then another, and another. What began with a single woman slowly spread through the streets of Strasbourg like an invisible force that no one could explain. Neighbors watched in disbelief. Families gathered in silence. Some tried to restrain the dancers. Others simply stood frozen, unable to understand what they were witnessing. According to historical accounts, the number of dancers continued to grow over the following weeks. While historians debate the exact figures, contemporary reports describe an outbreak unlike anything the city had ever seen. Strasbourg had faced hardship before: disease, hunger, failed harvests, but nothing had prepared its people for this. Strasbourg's leaders were desperate. They had never seen anything like this. There were no physicians who could explain it, no treatment anyone could trust. So they turned to the only answers they believed they had. Some officials concluded that the dancers had to keep moving until the strange illness ran its course. Musicians were hired. Drums echoed through the streets. String instruments filled the air. A wooden stage was built, in the hope that encouraging the dancers would somehow bring the nightmare to an end. It didn't. If anything, the outbreak only appeared to grow worse. As the days passed, the city watched in disbelief while exhausted bodies continued to move beyond the limits of ordinary human endurance. Eventually, the authorities abandoned this approach. Many of the afflicted were taken to a shrine dedicated to Saint Vitus, where prayers and religious rituals were performed in the hope of ending the mysterious dance. And slowly, the outbreak faded. The streets grew quiet once again, but the questions never disappeared. More than 5 centuries later, historians, physicians, and psychologists are still trying to understand what happened during that extraordinary summer. Today, the leading explanation is something known as mass psychogenic illness. Under extreme psychological stress, fear can spread through communities in remarkable ways, producing genuine physical symptoms without a single infectious disease being responsible. In a world already burdened by famine, disease, uncertainty, and deeply rooted religious beliefs, many researchers believe the people of Strasbourg may have experienced one of history's most remarkable examples of collective psychological distress. Another theory suggests that contaminated rye infected with a fungus called ergot may have played a role. While this idea was once widely discussed, many modern historians consider it unlikely to explain the prolonged, coordinated dancing described in contemporary accounts. The truth is, no single theory answers every question. Perhaps that is why the dancing plague continues to fascinate us. Not because it tells us something about the past, but because it forces us to confront something about ourselves. How much of human behavior do we truly understand? Could fear alone reshape reality for an entire community? Or are there still chapters of history waiting to be understood? More than 500 years have passed since the streets of Strasbourg fell silent. The footsteps have long since disappeared. The music has faded into history. Yet the mystery remains. Because sometimes, history doesn't leave us with answers, it leaves us with echoes. Welcome to Dark Chronicles.